Born into a war he did not choose. A nation torn between a conquered north and a resisting south. A young boy, not older than 7, watches his father, the king, fall as a martyr while fighting the invaders. And a few years later, he loses his older brother, the last hope for the Liberation War, who also falls on the same path. An entire nation bleeds. And a people await someone to stop the darkness. And in the heart of this chaos stands a boy not yet 10 years old. Fate left him alone to carry the responsibility of a divided kingdom, to continue the path his father and brother died for. The path to liberating Egypt from the invaders who ruled the land for a whole century. With him, one woman who preserved the throne and his life, his mother, the woman who saved Egypt. But the question that few know is, who is this boy? And what is the story of his family that made the first liberation revolution in Egypt's history? After the father falls, then the brother. The royal family in the south faced two choices: either surrender to a foreign power that occupied the north and the central lands, or continue the war, a war paid for in their blood. This family belonged to the 17th dynasty in Thebes, a warrior dynasty that never knew peace from the moment the invaders entered Egypt. But amid this chaos emerged the character who changed everything: the boy's mother, the strong queen who carried an entire kingdom on her shoulders. With the fall of the father and then the brother, the south trembled, nearing collapse. Soldiers scattered, the people feared, the state on the brink of ruin. But amid this darkness, one woman carried the country on her shoulders: Queen Ahhotep. She was not a battlefield commander, wielding a sword, but she led what was far more dangerous. She maintained the unity of the South, gathered the fleeing soldiers and brought them back to fight, calmed the chaos and secured the throne from falling. She was the last barrier preventing the invaders from swallowing Egypt, until her son grew and took up the banner of the Liberation War himself. At a young age, the boy sat on the throne of the South. But the truth was, the rule was not in his hands. The mastermind was his mother, and the veteran soldiers were the backbone of the army. The boy observed, learned, he studied the maps, listened to the commander's plans, and saw the impact of war on every home in his land. Slowly, the boy grew. With each passing year, the war intensified, until he became a fully grown young man, ready to lead the greatest liberation battle in ancient Egypt's history. Those who filled the north with terror were known as the Hyksos. Contrary to what some imagine, the Hyksos were neither a single army nor a large kingdom. They were a group of Asian tribes from the east, relying on chariots and horses, tools that were unfamiliar in Egypt at the time. They exploited the weakness of the country, advancing to control the delta and establishing their capital at Avaris. They ruled for about a century, imposed tribute on the south, and declared themselves kings of Egypt. But the south did not submit. The father began the rebellion and died for it. Then the older brother continued the war, achieving important victories, yet he too fell before completing the mission. Then came the boy's turn. The young man who grew up to the sounds of swords and spent his childhood under the shadow of war. The military military operations began from Thebes, advancing north. The army's plan relied on striking small garrisons first, cutting supply lines, gradually taking control of the Nile, then besieging the Hyksos capital. One of the most famous stories comes from a young officer in his army named Ahmose, son of Abana, who documented all the battles in detail on his tomb walls.
After a long siege, the Hyksos defenses collapsed. They fled toward Sinai. The Egyptian army pursued them all the way to Palestine. The goal: to ensure this enemy would never return. Thus, the north returned to Egyptian rule for the first time in 100 years. After the liberation, the story was not just the end of a war. It was the beginning of an entirely new era. Reunification of Egypt, building a strong army, establishing the first Egyptian empire, the start of the 18th dynasty, Egypt's strongest dynasty. And from the womb of this war, a new era emerged known today as the New Kingdom, the Age of Power and Conquests.
As for the young king, he married a woman who was his partner in the rise, Ahmose Nefertari, the queen who became a religious symbol for centuries after his death. Years after his reign, the king who restored Egypt's name and power passed away. But his legacy, the inscriptions, and his biography in the tombs still stand as evidence of a man who did not start life as a king, but as an orphaned child responsible for a fractured nation. He was the same boy who would later become the maker of the first true liberation in Egypt's history.
If you reached this point, then this story spoke to you. And if you want a second part about Ahmose, or another untold story from Egypt's ancient heroes, tell me in the comments. Your like and subscription help this channel bring history, culture, and knowledge back to life. So leave a comment, hit the like button, and subscribe. Because our journey into the past is just beginning.